Extremely excited, and I'm very nervous about tonight. I know it sounds funny, but it's been a dream of mine for many years to host something similar. I wasn't quite sure how it was always going to work, and I've come up with this model which is really lovely. So, an intimate dinner, talking with difficult conversations, often conversations that we all want to have but we just don't. It's a non-judgmental, it's a loving environment, it's open, it's honest, and I think we need more of these because we so seldom want to go to there, to have those like tonight's discussion. Tonight's conversation is hard and it's raw and it's many people around this table have had similar experiences, but it's a good place to sit and chat, and that's what I want to do tonight. So thank you for coming. Thank you for giving up your time, and thank you for paying some money. You should know that the model that I'm running it on is not for profit. So by paying for a ticket, the profit that we do make goes straight into paying it forward. So you're paying it forward for somebody who can't afford to come for the next one. I'm going to run a workshop for people who can't afford it, and that will be free based on the profit that we get from here. So it's a very kind model, and it's a giving back model. So thank you for paying it forward for somebody else.
Thank you.
Yeah. I'm so proud of my sister, Wendy, and my nephew, Hilton. Wendy lives in Canada. She's going to tell you a bit about herself. Hilton lives in South Africa. Their story is a heartbreaking one. Their story is a real, raw South African story. And they just put their hand up. I said, will you do it? They said, no, we'll do it. And that takes a lot of guts. So I'm just in awe of you both, and I look forward to tonight. So finally, we should kick off. And the way we're going to do it is we're going to do it as a Q&A, so I'll be a panelist. I'll ask questions because I know the story so well. And in that will become the whole story together. So we're not starting off by saying, I'm Hilton Balfour and I live in South Africa and I'm 38. Yeah, it's not going to be that. We're rather going to prompt the story through questionings. I think that might be a better, but there will be a Q&A afterwards, and Wendy and Hilton will speak, so if you want to ask them anything, they are the people. They are here tonight and they're sharing their lives. So, phones off or on silent would be great. And we're going to, as I said, we're going to plug it halfway and have some food, and then after that we'll carry on. And then, as I said, tea and coffee. For those that haven't heard me before, the tea and coffee, it is for your cost, I'm afraid, because they have to open the bar. And the food is beautiful and vegan. And as my brother-in-law says, he might go across the road for a steak. Okay, so I just want to tell you a funny story. On the way here, we drove from St. Francis, and our house is fine, thanks. Some of them aren't. I think 10 houses burnt down. But we were driving, and Wendy said she was very nervous, but she even looks nervous. And and Hilton, he was sober and not using anything. He said, Mom, would you like a glass of wine? Or can I give you a tranquilizer? And we laughed at the irony of it, and such is the basis of our relationship, that is honest and open. So, we're going to kick off. So, Hilton, I want you to introduce yourself to everybody. Can you hear?
Yeah.
Yes. To introduce yourself to everybody here tonight, and just to how you got to where you are today.
Okay, so I'm Hilton Balfour, I'm 38, and if I can just briefly sum up everything, I've just come out of a 9-month treatment at a primary care facility for the 11th time. As I said, I'm 38, and since I was 22, I've been in 11 treatment centers, and it has taken, in that 15 and a half years or so, I've been in treatment as either a client, a volunteer, or a staff member for 10 of those years. So where I am at the moment now is where I believe I'm finally ready to let go of certain things that kept me sort of contained even when I was in recovery. So when I wasn't using drugs or alcohol, I still had a very, very tense feeling about life. I didn't know how to live. I didn't have much clean time in between my relapses to actually receive enough from life to begin to understand that patience is required, that my expectations, in fact, were mostly not valid. Often they were there to either build me up for something that I wasn't ready for, or I just felt too pressured about being at a certain place at a certain time prior to me being ready for that. So I could say where I am at the moment is I think I've begun to understand how I let go, how I need to let go of certain things, specifically expectations, and how life perhaps is going to be 6 months in, a year in, and so forth. And to begin to make the right choices at the right time is something that I have to begin to have faith in myself with, and not to regulate so many things that haven't happened yet and come up with a technical way of being comfortable with the future now, instead of allowing it to take place. So I would say that's where I'm at the moment is willing to let go, willing to be more vulnerable than I have in the past, not putting up a front, and believing that that's enough and that life's rewarding enough without chemical substances to produce good things. Yeah.
Really, how would you define yourself and give us a few info bits about you?
Okay, I think that the way for me, I always find that question a really difficult one, how do you define yourself? But I think the way I would like to define myself is the sum total of the experiences that I have had and the journey that I've walked so far that have led me to a place of a belief structure that is fairly simple, and it's about unconditional love. It's about kindness over something that might be critical. It's about understanding rather than judgment. And it's about just simply opening my heart and being as vulnerable and as courageous and honesty as I can be. The rest of my life, I'm a wife, I'm a mum, I'm a sister, I'm a grandmother. I'm a friend, and I'm a yoga teacher.
And you live where?
Oh, and I live in Canada, sorry. Yeah, live on a little island, not so little actually, she's quite big, but an island just off the coast of Canada. Now, before we actually carry on, I would ask Sandy to give me, or humor me, and allow me to ask all of you to do something for me to settle my nerves, which is to ask you all to close your eyes and to do some breath work with me. So what I'm going to ask you to do is to draw your breath in slowly as I count to 5. So draw it in, 2, 3, 4, 5. Pause and exhale. 2, 3, 4, 5. Pause. Inhale. 2, 3, 4, 5. And exhale. 2, 3, 4, 5. Now just come back to the natural rhythm of your breath. And if you are happy to do so, and there's no order here, I would be so grateful if you could just say a word of how you're feeling right now. If people say it at the same time, they can say it at the same time, and I'll start. I'm scared.
Anxious.
Calm. Thank you. Okay. So important to have safe space. I think that's basically what I was trying to do, is to create and hold a safe space for us all, and more specifically, I guess, for Hilton, because I think that Hilton's story is truly putting himself out there and being vulnerable, opening himself up to judgment, which can so often happen. So yeah, thank you, Sam.
Cool.
I think
Okay.
it's more my mother's worry than me, I don't mind.
Okay, so Hilton, I'm going to go back to you, and I want to know your first beer, where it started, and how it started, or where were you?
I was in my standard 6th year at Rondebosch Boys High School in Cape Town, and life was going really well. I was quite focused on my academics, was a good sportsman, had lots of friends. I had no reason, superficially or externally, someone else looked in, to be so attracted by substances. But I remember the first time I was actually with my cousins in Plettenberg Bay, and we were at the Beacon Isle Hotel, and there was this a little bar called Whalers. And I was 13, I looked about 8. I mean, I was one of those people that really looked very young for their age. And anyway, I had some older friends from Rondebosch and started at 8 at that point, and they got me into the pub and got a few beers. And I think my first night I had 4 beers and about 5 or 6 cigarettes, and I kissed my first girlfriend. And I was like, these 3 things are, what I've been missing. And it was quite amazing, because from that day, my whole outlook and pursuit and desire for life simply changed. The order, the hierarchy in which my life was, which was really success in whatever I was getting involved in. I wanted to please my parents. I enjoyed school. I wanted to get good marks. Cricket, tennis, rugby, squash.
Hilton was a phenomenal sportsman, just saying. He was playing it down.
And
Can I say something? My husband, who's a very good tennis player, said that he had never seen anybody with such potential as Hilton playing tennis.
He's a good sportsman.
But I got very angry and broke my racket. But yeah, so I played a lot of sports, and I loved it. And when I had those 4 drinks, it wasn't that I was drunk. I mean, it sort of just alleviated, obviously, an underlying tension that I was unaware that I had. Throughout my sort of younger days, when I was at the boarding school in Standard 2, moved around quite a lot from Hermanus to Port Edward and so forth, I always had, if I look back, I had an underlying tension where if I wasn't playing sport, or if I wasn't involved in something, to sit by myself and just have peace, I don't think I ever did that. Anyway, so these drinks sort of helped me just for that night. I felt free. I didn't feel that I had to pretend. I didn't feel like I had to be a certain way for other people. And now I've got a pretty girlfriend, and the people older than me were inviting me to parties, and suddenly this new life was just far more attractive. I mean, it was just far better. You sort of got a little bit more respect from my peers at that stage, not because of academics or sport, but because of other things. And it was for me very attractive. It was like, what have you been missing? Who in their right mind would not want this?
And also, you said this morning about lying in bed after those 4 beers.
Yes. It wasn't after those 4 beers. About a year later, I went with a girlfriend to a sister's wedding, and I got back, and I must have had quite a bit to drink. I don't know how much, but enough that I was quite drunk. And I got home, and I remember my dad made me walk along a line, and I failed. But I got upstairs to the bedroom, and I mean, this is a very strange thing to go through someone's mind, but it went through mine. I lay there. I think I'd watched some program on suicide like 2 weeks before, some documentary, and it stuck in my mind, obviously. And I lay down in the bed, and I was spinning, really spinning, and I loved that feeling. And I remember thinking to myself, how could anyone want to kill themselves because of this documentary that I saw, if they could feel like this, or if they knew they could feel like this? Now, at 15, I look back and it's a very strange thing to be thinking, but at the time, I look back and I think that was probably, it had already started, it had already got to the point where it was so much a part of my weekly life, so much hooked into my social structure. The new persona that came out every time I drank was beginning to develop almost like a more powerful part of me than who I really was, whatever that was. And I think I probably would have said that I realized I had a problem, and I drank differently to other kids and used drugs differently at about 15.
Okay, stop you there, because I want Randy to talk about up to that point too. Like, how was Hilton from being this sort of very normal, well, to that?
So, yeah, Hilton was archetypically the perfect little boy. He spent his life wanting to please. He was very enthusiastic about every aspect of his life. If I look back, in hindsight, I think that Hilton had an underlying anxiety happening, and it manifested in a way that it just seemed to come across as somebody who was incredibly enthusiastic and competitive and wanting to be the best, and all those things that our society compliments and says, yes, good job. But I would also say that 15 was about the turning point when we felt that he was developing a problem. And of course, the response from family members and from friends is, oh, don't be stupid, Wendy. You don't drink, so you don't have a clue. This is a normal thing that happens. All teenagers go through this. You're overreacting, and the same would be said to Clive. So there's an element, then becomes a layer that comes on top of that of feeling guilty that you're feeling like that about your child.
Did you have an instinct?
Yeah, indeed.
So if you had to go back to that time, how much more attention would you have given that instinct?
I gave it quite a lot of attention, but the truth be told, this process leaves people who are watching the process helpless. There's very little anybody can do. I mean, short of locking him up and putting him in a room for the next 5 years, what can one do? So, I don't know whether that answers.
So I'm thinking, so you get to this point at 15, at Hilton's age of 15, and you know those signs. What are those signs?
So we did what we could. I think we tried. We were always already close family, and I think one of the symptoms for me that told both Clive and I that there was a problem was that he removed himself from us.
Hold on, wait. I'll just wait till I settle down. How's it, Bridget? No problem. How's it, Cheryl?
He didn't spend any time with us. He wouldn't come on trips with us. He removed himself from us, and that was hurtful and difficult. But we were told he's a teenage boy, and that's what happens. So, looking back, I'm not sure that we could have done anything differently. I really don't think there was anything that we could have done differently, other than pursue the possibility of him having an underlying anxiety, and maybe getting that treated, and that could possibly have changed the outcome. But we didn't.
Well, from 15 onwards, how did it escalate?
Well, it was, so 13 was booze and weed. That, when I was 14 and a half or so, I took my first ecstasy tablet and first mushrooms, which is a hallucinogenic, psilocybin, I'm not sure that. But then at 15, I took speed, or if you want to call it, took bad meth, basically. Cocaine at 17, heroin at 20, and throughout this process, drinking was almost always a part of everything except my heroin use. I never used heroin habitually in terms of a daily addiction, physical addiction. I used it as it would enable me to come down off the uppers. So I would use a small amount after a 2-day bender or a 3-day bender. I would use a small amount so that I could relax, and I didn't have that ticker going, I want to go and get more.
And how did you do school?
During school, mainly, I was smoking weed every day from, I would say, standard 9.
Did you know that, really?
We figured that out one day when Clive was in the garden, and he came to me and he said, there's a very strange plant that seems to have grown up overnight. And he took me to this plant that was outside Hilton's window. And it was a flourishing cannabis plant about this height.
It's actually from this, I wasn't trying to grow it. It was just the seeds that were going out.
So yes, we realized.
Yeah.
Okay. So your first rehab was when, and how did that happen?
Can I just ask a question? What got you from alcohol and weed
We're going to cover that, Jen.
into the first?
You're going to do that. But you can answer that.
Yeah.
No, but I mean, I just thought before you're getting onto the
Yeah,
strong
sure.
drug story.
Well, I mean,
Did somebody introduce you to it?
well, it was around very much. I mean, it was the change of government was 94. That was at the time that all of those things were coming into the country. Before 94, I mean, you were lucky to get your hands on any drugs other than mandrax and weed. From 94 onwards, the Nigerians were involved with a lot, the Tanzanians. I mean, I'm not talking this as a culture, I'm just saying those two peoples were part of the drug trade that came into the country when the new government took over. There were things like ecstasy and so forth before that, but it was very difficult to get hold of. So from 94 onwards, the floodgates opened. You began to be able to get hold of these things relatively easily.
Did you, how did you finance it?
At times I've stolen from my work. When I was working in Rondebosch at a coffee shop, I stole there for about 6 months, little bits at a time. I sold my golf clubs, I sold my cricket pads, I sold even some of my t-shirts. What else did I do? I sold some drugs sometimes at trance parties. I used to organize a reasonable amount of drugs to sell to people that came from Durban, Johannesburg, and Port Elizabeth to come to the Earth parties or the Vortex raves in the early 2000s. That used to feed my addiction as well. But I didn't use things like heroin and cocaine and methamphetamine daily. I was a binge user, so I used to use 3 or 4 days at a time, once every 2 weeks. If I had money or more money, it would be maybe within a shorter period. And then
that was still while you were still at school?
No.
After school?
That's after school. At school, how did I get the money? Often, partying and so forth with older people and so forth. They take care of some things that you can't, specifically with the money. I did steal from my mom as well at times when I was at school, but I also worked. I used to work at Western Province Cricket Club as a waiter from the age of about 15. So I did earn a little bit of money, but a lot of things that I did to get finance for my addiction, I did that was underhanded and morally insufficient, for sure.
So when did you know that you were an addict?
I don't know, it's just a strange thing. If I want to explain what an addict really is, or in the DSM-5, which is the Diagnostic Psychiatric Manual, now they no longer say addict because apparently it's a bad word, So they now use the word substance use disorder. And so what is an addict? My understanding of an addict is someone that takes an external substance or does something actively to create the initial peace, or that relinquishes some sort of problem internally, that creates problems in the long run, but continues to do so. So it's really got very little to do with how much you are using or drinking. I mean, I've seen people that drank more than me in a week that weren't alcoholics or addicts. By no means. They got up the next day, or they had a meeting at 4:30 in the afternoon the day before, they wouldn't drink that night. And
so do you think it's a genetic thing, or do you think it's a behavioural thing, or what?
Well, you see, this is the problem, because the modalities that have been in the past that put their hands up and categorize addiction as being exactly this in the road that we understand it, it's just not like that. So genetically, there's no gene that any doctors looked at and said, well, there's a gene for addiction. People say things like, well, it's in the family. Yeah, it's in everyone's family.
Sure.
At some place back, there's someone that has a problem. So I think it's really quite a bad way of saying, well, there we go, it's your great aunt, and with this one it's like, it's your dad, just for me it doesn't really make sense. Perhaps we're predisposed because of our brain chemistry prior to using it, because of certain neural circuits that are opened up more, or that respond better to it, or whatever the case is. But what was the question again?
No, don't worry, you've answered it.
Okay.
When did you think or know for sure that Hilton was an addict? Well, how old was he, and where were you?
He was 18, and he had had a really dreadful accident. He was drunk, and a car hit him, and he was thrown up into the air, and he came down on his head, and he was unconscious, and just by luck, an ambulance drove past, picked him up, and took him to Courtsville Hospital. Pardon?
No.
Sorry. And so we decided that we needed to go and see someone. And Clive, being a physician, was able to get him an appointment with someone who was regarded as one of the leading adolescent psychiatrists in Cape Town. And he went to see this man for 6 months. We had great difficulty accessing the psychiatrist. When we ultimately did, I had been plucking up courage to put this question to the psychiatrist, and I said to him, I really believe that my son has a substance abuse problem. I think he's an alcoholic or an addict. And this man looked at me and he said, Hilton is no sooner an alcoholic or an addict than I am. He has a social disorder. And we left that meeting. Hilton stopped seeing him because it really wasn't doing anything. But I knew then. I absolutely did know then. And then ultimately, a couple of years later, Hilton went into his first rehab.
Where
And
was
I think-
that?
Where?
Yeah.
Where was the rehab? In Coffey.
Stepping stones.
Yeah. So that's when I knew. And Sandy, you were saying what makes an addict. For me, there have been so many different things that I've been told, and I actually wrote them down. Not knowing when to start or stop is a big one. One drink is too many and 1,000 is not enough. Using your drug of choice, whether it's alcohol or cocaine, despite the chaotic consequences, going back to do it again. And for me, with Hilton, the biggest red flag was that Hilton disappeared. Hilton that I knew disappeared. There were no longer the ethics or the morals or any of that still in place that Hilton essentially has in who he is. And I used to call his addiction slick because he could manipulate, he could lie, looking at me in my eyes and lie. And I know that Hilton doesn't lie, but slick does.
So did you see this? Could you predict a relapse for Hilton? And what were those signs? And was it a few days before or
Sometimes.
can you just talk us through that? Sorry. Technical malfunction. Okay, that's fine. So what
You know what, it's going to be different for Hilton. His remembering of his relapse is going to be different to mine. But basically he became deceitful and he became withdrawn from me, and he became manipulative, and he was no longer Hilton. And he would get aggressive, and Hilton is not an aggressive person.
Can you talk about the two personas for you? Because you know them both well.
Yeah. I think in my younger days, when I started to become preoccupied with using and drinking and getting away with things and lying and cheating and stealing and thinking my parents were the bad part of this whole thing because they didn't see the enlightenment of being pissed and high. When you genuinely have that, I know it sounds really terrible, but that it's almost like in the body of your existence no one understands. And they obviously see far more about you than you see about yourself, but you're not willing to listen. It's almost like you have to have it at the cost of everything. I think about some of the things that I did, like I stole from my grandmother when she was 86 and she didn't have a lot of money. I stole 5 rand. Okay, it doesn't sound like a lot of money, but it's the principle. And I still have huge regret about this. And that 5 rand was 5 rand short of a haircut. And I remember sitting upstairs in my cousin's house and my grand coming walking towards me. And she was shaking. Either because she didn't realize maybe she was losing her mind and she didn't see the money, or someone has taken her money and I was the only one there. And I'll never forget the feeling that I had. I stole 5 rand from my grandmother to go and get a stalk of weed because I was bored on a Saturday, which prevented her from getting her haircut. Now, if you can understand that that's just one incident that you can perhaps see, and with me, I don't look at them and say, who cares? I sort of do it and say, oh, I hope she didn't find out, or she got another 5 rand, or oh my God, And then I see it like that and I feel so shameful, so incredibly shameful. So I'm not numb to what I do, but it's almost like I am presented with no option but to shame myself at the cost of getting it, so that I can get these chemicals or escape from being with myself just for 20 minutes, And, I lied to my mother, I lied to my father. On many occasions, I did as well at times when I was trying to get clean or trying to stop using. I would really want to please them. I would really want to make up for all the rubbish that I did. I mean, I was never ever oblivious to what I had caused. I just can't feel what it must feel like from their point of view. I don't have kids, and it's probably something that I won't ever understand if I have children. But it's very, very shameful. And that sort of thing inside, in fact, produces more of the same behavior, because living with yourself, with that shame, becomes harder and harder the more shameful acts you get involved in. So it's like this vicious cycle. And I'm starting, if I was my mom and my dad, I would not have taken me back. Not a second. So I'm very, very lucky to have the family that I have, and they supported me throughout my entire life. So yeah.
So there've been a couple of disturbances in your life.
Yes.
We like to call them disturbances, but I mean the chaos, that comes around being an addict. And I know that Wendy got stabbed trying to take you out of a party, and you got run over. But I think that the pinnacle of it was Sao Paulo. You want to just talk us through Sao Paulo and how you ended up going to bring drugs back.
Yeah. Well, I mean, when you're taking drugs for years, and I'd taken drugs in different cities, I knew some of the underworld and some of the drug dealers, some of the dens and so forth. And I was at that stage at a treatment facility halfway house called Caroline Crisis Centre.
In KwaZulu-Natal.
Yeah, near Hillcrest. And I'd been there for quite a substantial period of time, and I'd relapsed there once or twice. I sort of held down a job reasonably well. Still very, very much anxious about life, not understanding why I can't just enjoy things. And one day I was caught smoking weed there with another guy that I was staying with, and Joey Duplessis was the director, locked me up, arrested me and locked me up for the weekend in Hillcrest. And then on the Monday morning she said, listen boy, you're not coming back, you got to go. And so I made my way down to Point in Durban, it's right near South Beach, if people know Durban. And I started staying in the homeless shelters there and washing cars and so forth, and just trying to get by. And after about a month or so, maybe just a little bit longer than that, it could have been about 2 months there, I made a decision that I needed to get back to Cape Town, and I knew the Nigerians on Point Road reasonably well. At that stage I wasn't using cocaine or any hard drugs, I was actually just drinking and smoking weed. I didn't have enough money to do that anyway.
What age were you?
28. And then so I offered to do a run for them. They do runs to Thailand for heroin and to Brazil and Peru for cocaine. Specifically Sao Paulo, Johannesburg is a very well-known drug route. And so I didn't even have it in my mind that I was really going to go. And I know that might sound very, very silly. But I didn't. I knew that they would feed me some money. I knew it would take a couple of weeks. They'd put me in a safe house before I flew. And my plan was to get hold of a couple of $100 and then take a bus down to Cape Town, where I'd lived on the streets before, and I knew more people, and I could probably make a way for myself. So that was the plan. But from day one, the Nigerians said no problem. They made me wait in the pub for about a day. And then someone came to fetch me. They took me to an ANC municipal workers' house. We stayed in New Germany, just outside Pinetown. So the ANC, in some way, is connected with the Nigerian drug trade to a certain degree. I don't know the essence of that, but I mean, it was quite strange. So I was with an ANC worker, he had an ANC car, and he spoke a lot about politics and so forth. So a very nice man. But I stayed there, and they fed me money every day. They gave me like $300 a day, and that I can just go and do whatever. I suppose they wanted to see what I did with it. But I used to just go to the pub, smoke weed, drink. I never bought any drugs because I suppose I didn't have enough money, and I also didn't want to stop this feeding of money before I saved up enough to go. And I literally could not control myself. I stayed for the next day, and the next day, and the next day, saying, I'll just go tomorrow, I'll just go tomorrow. And I woke up one morning and he says, today's the day. I'd been for my yellow fever shots. He bought me some clothes and so forth, and 2 specific Cellini suitcases. And so my job was to go and collect 2.5 kilograms of 80% cocaine hydrochloride, which is pure cocaine. And I would be getting paid 28,000 for the trip, and that's all, for possible 15 years in jail. Now, this is obviously the reason why I didn't really want to go. But as I said, the day was there, he drove me to the airport, and I was still drunk from the night before. I got on the plane in Durban, I flew to Johannesburg, I got off, and I had about $700 that he had given me, and that was to pay for the hotel and some living costs for 6 days. So,
Was it an address?
no, not an address, just a telephone number that I need to contact when I get to Sao Paulo. He would pick me up, take me to their place, and the next day drop me off at the Tulip Hotel in Sao Paulo, where I would stay for a further 5 days, and then fly back. So, yeah, I got in Johannesburg, I got there, I put the number in my coin pocket of my jeans, and I went to the keg, and I drank like hell. I sold $100 for rands to the bartender, and I had about 12 beers in an hour and a half. I was at this stage very nervous. I almost ran away in Johannesburg with the dollars. I suppose if someone would have bought the rest of them from me, I maybe would have done it. Anyway, so I numbed the plane. I bought a bottle of peach schnapps for the plane as well, and as I got on, I drank that too, and I had a blackout on the plane. And I only realized this later that it was the thing that saved my life, because I changed my pants on the plane to another pair of jeans that I had in my carryover. So I don't remember. So I arrived in Sao Paulo and I look in my pocket and there's no number there. I think, what the hell is going on? I don't remember changing, whatever the case is. So I made this decision not to look for it, but to go straight to the hotel. I got to the hotel and I looked for this thing everywhere. I can't find it. I'm now still a little bit drunk and hungover and not quite there. And I make the decision to go out and party in Sao Paulo with the rest of my money. So I party the whole night through, and then I spend all my money, and now I'm stuck somewhere in Sao Paulo. Hardly anyone speaks English in Brazil, let me tell you. And all I knew was that I was staying at the Tulip Hotel, which is like saying the Southern Sun. You know, it's like Sao Paulo's at 17 million people, so it's a huge place. And I didn't even know where this hotel was. My bags were there and so forth. So eventually, through the police and them dropping me at a tulip place, I could say I'm at one of the tulips, this is my name. And eventually I got back. A taxi took me there. I didn't have money to pay the taxi. He was coming back at 3 o'clock to collect his cash. Then I find the number when I get upstairs. I don't phone them straight away. I phone my Nigerian guys first back in Durban to try and see, is it okay for me to flip and phone these oaks still or whatever. And I can't get through. And when they come on, they don't want to hear anything. They don't want to even recognize it's me and whatever. And then I decide not to phone them. At that point, I'm like, you must be crazy. Just don't phone. Now you can understand, this is not a logical decision. You know, I haven't come to a conclusion that this is a fantastic idea. I found myself in Sao Paulo, can't control my drinking, thinking totally irrationally, and now I've come to a place where I'm not going to get involved with this. But I've already accepted money from them, they've paid for my trip, and I wasn't going to now pick up the cocaine, because if I did that, that's either jail or something worse. And I decided not to. So eventually, it is quite long and drawn out, but I'm going to try and just condense it quickly. I was sitting in the hotel and they were threatening the police to come and extradite me or lock me up until someone could pay for my flight to go back, or until something could be organized. And I was like, you know what, that's a great idea. Like, I'm just going to sit here, let the police come, I don't mind, you know, that's the way out of here. And then the manager of the hotel comes to me with a credit card number with my second name and my last name, which I didn't have a credit card, so I don't really know how that happened, but I think perhaps the Nigerians and him they knew what was cooking. Anyway, so I said, okay, pay my bill then. So he said, okay, I'll pay your bill and you got to leave. I'll book you another hotel down the road.
At this stage, did the Nigerians still think you were picking up the cocaine?
I have absolutely no idea. Like at this stage, I know. They want to speak to me from the side. I've decided not to phone those guys. This guy's given me a fake credit card number. I'm very confused. I just want to drink and stop feeling it. So I go over to the other hotel. I start drinking on the credit card number, just so I can relax. You know, it's like a self-medication type thing. So I get pissed again there. And I think, well, I've got to get out of this. I can't carry on doing this. But then I went to another hotel with the same credit card number, getting the front desk receptionist to book my ticket, to book my room, and then I went there. And I did that 3 times. hoping that if the Nigerians, or if they knew where I was because of the original manager, they wouldn't be able to find me if I hopped a couple.
So you started running then?
Yeah. Although if the credit card number came from them, they knew exactly where I was. But the point was, I just had to keep on the move, and I carried on drinking. And then I phoned Joey Duplessis, the lady who arrested me for smoking weed. She has got a soft heart but very hard feet. She's an incredible lady, but if you cross her, you're in trouble. So I love her very much. She basically helped me to get out. So she contacted you, I think, or she contacted Chris Smythe. Who's
Our brother.
No.
Oh, my sister.
She contacted my sister, my daughter in Cape Town, who contacted Clive in Canada. And then.
So you get that call, and what do you do?
Well, Clive.
Sorry, I must just tell you that there is Clive, who is Hilton's dad. We didn't introduce him, but here he is. He's part of the story.
So it was, I'll never forget it, was a Friday afternoon, and Joey had phoned Lara at 2 o'clock in the morning South African time. And there's a 10-hour difference between South Africa and Canada. And Lara immediately phoned Clive, and the irony is that Clive is, as I said, a physician. He doesn't answer his phone when he's with patients. Lara got him literally 3 minutes before he went into his afternoon session, and Clive phoned you.
Yes, I remember chatting to Dad on the phone.
And he said, don't do anything, we're going to get you out, and don't take drugs from anybody, just stay where you are. And Clive came home, and I'm happily watering the garden with my little puppy, and it's Friday afternoon, and it's going to be a lovely weekend, and Clive came to me and he said, I need your help with the computer. I think he wouldn't have told me if he'd been able to do the computer work on his own, but he couldn't. So he said, please will you come and help me with the computer? So I said, sure. Why, what? He said, well, no, just come. So I sat down with the computer, and he said, just don't get upset, don't yell and scream, but Hilton is in Sao Paulo. And I knew that he just needed to say Hilton was in Sao Paulo, and I knew what was going on. And yeah, so then what Clive wanted me to do was to change Hilton's flight to an earlier day. And when I tried to do that, it became apparent that it was booked through an agency that was linked to the drug cartel, so we could not change the flight, which left us in a difficult situation. And ultimately, my older brother was the acting CEO of SAA. So I said to Clive, I'm going to phone Chris and try not to tell Chris what's going on because it would implicate him, but ultimately I had to. And my brother got him out. He basically said, get Hilton. There were so many different coincidences that happened. We had to get Hilton from where he was to the airport, and in those days, Canada, if you used a Canadian credit card internationally, you had to get permission beforehand. They would shut the card down, they would not let it go through. And Clive phoned the taxi at 2 o'clock in the morning and said, here's my credit card number, please get my son to Sao Paulo Airport, which he did. The money went through, which is weird. And Chris said to me he needs to get through security as fast as he possibly can, because you don't know whether the drug cartel know where he is. And once he's through security, he will be safe. But understand that the chances are is that the Brazilian police are going to strip search, which they did, because they would be convinced that he was a drug mule. Anyway, he got through, but then we lost him. And Chris said to me, we haven't been able to find him. We gave Hilton the name of a person to go to. And ultimately, I mean, there were about 4 or 5 hours and we did not know where Hilton was.
Where were you, Hilton?
I have no idea, probably the airport.
Yeah, you were in the airport, but you hadn't gone to that man yet, the SAA man yet. And then Chris said to me, look, Wendy, the flight that you want him to come home on is 52 people overbooked. There's no way he will get on that flight. He is with the SAA guy. He's safe. He's going to have to sleep in the airport overnight and take his normal flight the next day. So I said, well, neither of us are sleeping. And early in the morning, my brother phoned and said, you won't believe it, but he's on the flight. 52 people did not arrive. And he was on that flight, and he said, I just want you to know that I am going to have him escorted off the plane because I need to know
That he hasn't got the
what's
drugs.
going on. No, they knew he didn't have drugs because of the
No.
Brazilian
They didn't
visa.
know.
No, they didn't know. They still thought I had. That's what the reason why.
He was strip searched, yeah.
Anyway, the point is that he said that he's going to get his SAA security guys to take him off the airplane and interrogate him. And a couple of minutes later he phoned again. He said customs got hold of him before he's been taken in by customs, and that was when they strip searched and we were there for ages. Previously we had been told about Healing Wings, which is a rehab facility at that stage in Mozambique, and we had already brought him in there. So ultimately that's what happened. Clive's sister's son came and fetched him and took him to the flight that took him from Nelspruit to from Johannesburg to Mozambique to Maputo. And another huge coincidence that I found quite remarkable is that you can't really travel internationally unless you have 6 months on your passport. It's not going to expire in 6 months. And Hilton was flying into Maputo, and I knew his passport was going to be expiring in 3 months. We got through, and the next phone call we got was from the people at Hilton to say that he was there safely. It was probably the worst weekend of our lives. I didn't want to be in my body. I remember that. We just got a little puppy, and the little puppy was about a month old, and I had to take care of that little dog. And I didn't want to be in my body because all I could think about was Hilton being caught by the Brazilian police and what they were going to do to him. So that was really hard, and I think that he was taken care of somehow or other. I have no way of explaining it. I'm not a organized religious kind of person, but Hilton was spared, and I'll be forever grateful. But it was a really difficult weekend.
Yeah,
So you get to South Africa, and now you haven't slept for 5 days, and
Well,
your
my-
anxiety levels are massive.
yeah, I also had like about 20 beers at the airport. So, but it just, I'm on the plane again. I'm hearing things over the intercom, and then they tell me to stay on the plane. And
There were a couple of other people too with you, right?
Yeah, well, I saw someone got caught right in front of me, the customs.
With the drugs.
Girl came from Sao Paulo as well, South African lady. She's got a travel bag with those 2 rungs coming down, and customs broke them open in front of us. The cocaine came out. So she was in the New Magazine about 2 weeks ago. She got 12 years in Sun City.
At this stage, you're thinking that the Nigerians are still after you.
Sort of, but not really, because they,
Are you small fry?
yeah, small fry. I mean, I didn't even pick up the drugs. If I picked up the drugs, I'd be in trouble. But, if they would never come searching for me just for the plane ticket. You must understand that the way these things work is, if I'm carrying 2.5 kilograms, I'm almost certainly going to be set up. And someone else will come through with quite a large
You're the decoy.
And there's probably 3 or 4 decoys on that plane. That lady was one of them. And so what happens is they are willing to lose 5 people with 2.5 kilograms, which is 12.5 kilograms of cocaine, and one person comes through with 30. That's how cheap the cocaine is. In Brazil, you can buy 1 ounce, which is about 28 grams of cocaine hydrochloride, 80%, for $50 US. Now on the street here, you're paying 500 rand a gram now for probably 35% cocaine. So if you work out, like how much money is being made, you can easily get away with all the money they're spending on the decoys and still make bucks. So, yeah, no,
When you say with that number of decoys, on the same flight, are they anticipating that the dogs might miss the main walk?
well,
Or how do they think that the main
there's
dog
there's no dogs, you know, like there's not all these dogs. I mean, there may very well be now, but when I was there, I didn't see one dog when I came through. What happens is they had affidavits of 6 people on that flight when I walked out. And we all had to go straight to customs. I didn't even walk through the airport where, you know, a regular passenger would go. I had to wait for my bag to come through. Then they searched us, then they x-rayed our stomachs and asked us a bunch of questions for about an hour and a half. We were all red flagged by the Nigerians to get searched, you know. The Nigerians would have known that I didn't pick it up, but I mean, I was red flagged before I even went. Or, if you understand what I'm trying to say. So it's, you know, that's one of the ways they get drugs into the country, but it's only one of many. You know? Yeah.
You're lucky.
I was very lucky, yeah. Very, very lucky.
We all know that Hilton's had about 6 lives. Eh?
Oh, more.
Yeah, no.
But it's just to show that, like, when I'm sober and clean and I'm not too frantic, I'm reasonably like logical, and I you know, a decision like that, when I look back and how that all transpired, it still boggles my mind. It still doesn't make any sense to me, other than that's what takes place in the psyche of someone who's desperate, hopeless, so confused, angry, resentful, shameful. It really, logic goes straight out the window. And the very thing that would make you feel worse or get you into a worse position is not in the forefront of your mind. It's something to be warned of. It's a very, very strange dynamic. And that's why it's so difficult to understand this disorder in a logical way. You're trying to understand an illogical thing in a logical way. So that's why I think a lot of people need to start to say, you know, what's really going on with that person? Not, he's got a substance use disorder, he's an addict, so all of them, find something that works, which is really the modalities of modern day treatment centers.
So maybe this is a good time to ask you about the stigma attached to being an addict. I mean, and the mother of an addict. So do you experience that when you talk to them?
Yeah.
So maybe you can just explain.
So right from the early days, there has not been, and I genuinely mean this, there has not been one day that I have felt ashamed of him. I have full insight into the disorder, and I have never been afraid to speak about him. And being a mother in Western society, meeting people, one of the first questions that you are asked is, do you have children? And then it's, and what do they do? And so they are putting you into whatever little box they think they need to put you into. And who's the eldest? And I would talk about my children, and I would talk about it. They ask me, do you have boys or girls? Yeah, I have a son. Oh, and what does he do? And I would normally answer by talking about the qualities that I love about Hilton, and then they'll again say, and what is his job? And generally, Hilton has not been, he spent most of his time unemployed. So my answer to them is, my
Well,
son.
that's not true.
Well, not most of the time, but you have. No, it's true. You're right. You've been employed. I beg your pardon. You've had lots of employment. But I don't. A lot of the time, when those sort of things happen, my answer to them is, my son is a recovering addict, or he is working on his recovery, and they are like, you can't believe that I've actually said it. Pardon? And then what ends up happening is that they start telling me their stories, just about without exception. When I talk about Hilton and being the mother of somebody who has struggled with addiction, people that I speak to tell me their stories. But there's always that initial sort of shock, my God, you actually said it out loud. People don't like to do that. And that's why talking like this tonight is so important. It's an uncomfortable conversation for some people. It is raw and it is hard, but it is necessary, because the sooner we can take this out from under the cloud that it is under, the better. Yeah.
So you've been to 11 rehab, and also may I just ask you that, is rehab the best place to go to? Maybe you want to just talk about that.
Rehab is, in my opinion, residential care rehab, in other words, where you go into an institution for a certain period of time, is really only for people that really need that. Otherwise it can be in fact a detriment to that person, without a doubt. And what tends to happen is, like other medical areas, people think that treatment fixes people, because it often does in Western medicine. This is not like that. It's nothing like it at all. So when people, it's becoming better now, the more research that's being done and the more individual treatment becomes, it's getting better. But the thing is, you say, 10 years ago, up until even now that people are doing, son's got a problem with booze or drugs, let's find a rehab for him. Thinking that any rehab that someone else has referred you to is going to be right for your son because it worked for their son. Or because, for whatever reason. Now the parents want to believe that people can get healed. They want to believe that whatever this rehab says is what they do. And they also want some peace of mind because their son or their daughter is causing them so much hassle that it's just get off my hands. And fair enough. And the problem with that is, a lot of people go in and come out worse than they did when they went in. Now I don't mean physically or mentally more destabilized, but they now, if they are not willing to recover, have far more knowledge, understanding which drugs work and how they do, where they can get the drugs from. Maybe they even get the numbers in the rehab. Maybe they make new connections from older people that are in crime. So these are all the things that are very real for someone that has no interest in giving up drugs. On the other hand, if you want to give up, you can just about go anywhere and give up and find a way. So it's really about the impetus from the individual person to want to find a new way to live. And I think most rehabs don't do a fantastic job with initiating that in the beginning. It is very much negative based, which you need. You need to know that you've hurt your loved ones. You need to know that you've sabotaged your own future. You need to know what a flippin' monkey you've been. You do need that, but you also need a spark, and you need a reason and a new desire and a hope. You need both of these things to be able to walk out of any treatment center and have some direction and some real perseverance and some substance that can keep you going along that road long enough for you to begin to receive from life in a new way, because it does not happen straight away. I had 4.5 years clean at one stage, yet I relapsed again. Does that mean that everything I did prior to that means nothing? NA may say that. I don't agree. I think that the journey of growth has attributing factors from different experiences that bring you to a place where now you have a new choice. You have a slightly new perspective. The same words that you remember, that you read in the literature, perhaps have a slightly different slant now. Maybe you have a greater understanding of how you approach certain things now. Just because it didn't work doesn't mean everything was wrong. And I think that's the problem with rehab as well. You've been clean 5 years, that's not real clean time. You couldn't have been right because something went wrong. And I understand where that comes from, but I just simply don't agree with it. And that doesn't mean I disagree with all rehabs or NA. I think that there's wonderful parts to NA, and I think it's really helpful socially. But I think this is the problem. There is no perfect line. There is no path that's going to suit everyone. There's not exact things that you do in each day that will keep you clean and happy. There are things that will keep you clean. But is that what you want? As a drug addict, an alcoholic, to just be dry and sober, and that's the life. or do you want to find out why you want to live? And I think that's what's lacking. It's really very little to do with staying clean and sober.
So,
Although it's very important. If you understand what I'm trying to say.
so we spoke earlier about why this rehab that you're going to now is different, and how you found out that your anxiety was a precursor to addiction, and how you self-medicated at 15 rather than became an addict. So maybe please.
Yeah, because you try and understand, what is it about me? I don't want to use drugs. I mean, how many times? When we were 23, I came out and I said, okay, maybe I can still do this and that. But at 26, I mean, I'd been to another couple of rehabs by then, and I really didn't want this part of my life. I really didn't want to try and drink and use in a new way. I just didn't want that, but I found life so unrewarding and tense, and struggled to be who I was because of perhaps worrying about what other people thought of me, or if I was going to add up to what I thought was a reasonable human being. Just overly concerned with concepts and reasons and ideologies and what's going to work for me, and I was just so consumed by this that I couldn't live. I couldn't smell the roses, I couldn't really feel anything, because I was either judging myself from being too weak or judging myself from being overly critical, and I was like, where do I stand, who am I? And I think it was because I had an underlying anxiety, depression they call it, something like that. I was always very anti any medication, particularly when at one stage I became a very, very strong Christian, and it did actually help me stay clean. But I was really told by quite a few people that any medication is from the devil, and certain things like that, which made me even more adverse to taking any of these things. And must I say now, when I started taking off the medication, on how to help you, just wanted to...
No, you can tell the story as you want.
Okay. And so what happened was, which has actually changed my life, and I mean, I'd hate to say that it's only the pill, that's changed my life, but it's certainly been the little thing that's got me over the edge from everything else I've tried. So I've been a hugely passionate evangelical Christian. I studied theology, I read the Bible every day, I prayed for an hour every day, I woke up at 5 and just had quiet time. Like, that was my life now. And I was at rehab and working there at the time, and that was the construct, the ideology of coming clean, and it got me clean. It was my initial freedom and bondage to substances. However, I'm now at a place where I don't disregard religion. I still think Jesus is a cracker. When I say cracker, I mean a wonderful human being, and he may very well be the Son of God, but I don't know. But I still read the Bible, I still believe in the principles, but I've let go of trying to work it all out, trying to follow a path in Scripture like I can interpret the Scripture book that's obviously far greater than what my mind can wrap around. So, so that ended badly because it actually made me more tense, and I think it fed into my anxiety and my tension.
Were you aware that you were anxious?
No, not really, because I'd always been like that. I just thought I was a weird chap. But I was never anxious in front of people.
No.
It didn't stop me from playing sport or getting involved with people or conversing. I wasn't anxious like that. But I think I was just so overly concerned with worries in my head, but projected this supposed calmness.
So you decided to go into antidepressants for anxiety?
You go back to when we were up in White River in March, and that's when it all happened.
You can tell the story.
No, let's cut home.
Well, Sandy came down to visit me, and at this stage I was coming out of...
This was in March, eh?
Yeah.
You know.
This year.
This year, yeah.
Me too.
Oh, yes, you were there.
Yes.
And I didn't forget you were there. And Sandy said to me, don't you have like an anxiety thing? Maybe there's something else. And she said, well, why don't you try this thing, Psylift, SSRI. So it's a selective serotonin reuptake inhibitor. Basically leaves a little bit more serotonin in your brain.
I'd seen Hilton bite his nails to the bleeding when he was driving in White River, and he was using on the side because we smelled booze on news, and we were like, what is going on here? Like, he's supposed to be in rehab, and he was driving and he was biting his nails.
Oh, no, but I wasn't at rehab then.
No, he
And
wasn't
he was out of
there.
rehab then. And I looked at Wendy and I said, Wendy, I'm sure he's got an anxiety disorder. And she said, no, but I said, has he ever been on antidepressants for anxiety? And Wendy said, no, we've never had that. And I said to Hilton, have you ever tried? He said, no, he doesn't want to take any pills. I said, are you kidding me? You spent your life taking pills. Are you kidding me? He says he doesn't want to take a pill every day. What? Anyway, so you started taking...
Yeah, so then I started taking these pills, and then I'm very, very grateful because it was about 15 days after I was taking them. And I just suddenly noticed certain things in each day, and I still felt like myself. I didn't feel any different as a human being. I didn't feel high or happy. I just felt when something happened, it was, I think, when someone, normally when people are rude, it's like one of my pet hates. I just get angry. Like, someone's rude for no reason. I either like confront them or I hold on to it and feel like really angry. You know? And that's just the way I live my life. Like, I mean, and when I took this thing, someone was really rude to me, and I was like, I had the first initial thing, and then it just sort of like went, and I was like, unbelievable. It was almost like my response was able to be looked at before I held onto it or reacted. And it was the strangest feeling. It was so obvious to me that it was different that I became very excited. I was like, oh my God, this is the greatest thing ever. And I was thinking, was this just maybe a placebo thing? Is it just because maybe it's a day? And then it happened again that day and again. With different areas of my life. Little pet hates to irritation about certain things going wrong, thoughts in my own mind that were often very self-judgmental went there. And I thought, oh my God. And then, I thought that was all it was. And it's obviously going to be these little instances which get better. But then I started to realize that, oh my God, my whole life, my hours of each day were now opened up to different things. So I wasn't now worrying for 3 hours because I'm angry at Justin because he looked at me like I was a dick and I got the wrong impression. But I was now able to spend that time looking and appreciating different things. I could now suddenly concentrate for longer periods of time when I was reading. I now wasn't so self-judgmental. I now wasn't very judgmental towards other people. I could clearly see things for what they were.
So would you say that you were replenishing your serotonin levels, which keep you normal?
It was for me an absolutely revolutionary thing. I can't explain. I mean, even today, like it's 9 months after I've started taking them, and I mean I feel very normal, and I don't still have those same things I had in my first 2 months. But it feels like there's something that is just not as worrying as it used to be. Life is just easier to be able to appreciate. I'd say, I don't know if I feel happier. It's not that. It's almost like
Settled.
Tranquil.
Clive, maybe I'd just like to get your perspective from a medical perspective and also being so close as the father. And maybe you can just talk about some of the medical advancements that have been taking place in North America.
I'm certainly not an expert, but obviously I have some understanding and some interest. There's an awful lot of ignorance about this disease, and I'm not emotional.
It's okay. Should we come back to you? Okay. So, how do you forgive? How do you forgive yourself? How do you forgive Hilton? How do you forgive yourself? Because I know that you have carried the stuff.
For the longest time, every time I would feel sorry for myself, I would stop and think about what it must be like to be Hilton and to have those challenges every day. And I would stop feeling sorry for myself. And insofar as forgiveness goes, I've never felt the need to forgive Hilton because I love him. and I think he's an extraordinary human being. Despite the difficulties he has had in his life and the challenges he's had in his life, he has an enormous amount to offer to the world. And yes, of course, I've been angry. And absolutely, I have a PhD in enabling and codependency. I am the kingpin of those. But really learning. And Hilton spent time with us in Canada, and it was such a gift, even though it didn't work out, because it was the springboard and the beginning of developing a really deep and abiding honesty between the two of us. I used to be terrified to say or do anything around Hilton, because I used to think that whatever I did could affect him, make him go and use. I mean, how arrogant is that for me? I'm no longer afraid to speak up to Hilton. I know that I can speak in absolute honesty, even at the risk of perhaps upsetting him, knowing that if I do upset him, he'll be able to respond in honesty toward me. So Hilton is just, for me, and it might sound overly dramatic, but Hilton has been my greatest spiritual teacher. And he has taught me more about myself than anything or anyone else has. And I wouldn't change a thing. I am so proud of him. And I love him more than the English language can explain.
I'll have another go. Just in case anyone thinks that the medication that Hilton referred to is a drug used for alcoholism, it's not. No. So just retraced it. I trained at UCT, I finished in 1976, and the attention given to addiction as alcoholism fell under the Department of Psychiatry. We did a psychiatry doctor, and basically alcoholism was classified as a personality disorder 40 years ago. We had really as good as no training at all in that, right? Fritz here, stroke UCT, has an international reputation for the whole fields of cardiology, immunology. Chris Barnard had just done transplants when I was there and so on. But we had next to no education in terms of addiction whatsoever. You may have heard of the drug called anti-booze. A lot of people think it's anti-booze. It's not, it's anti-abuse. There's no thing anti-abuse. And it's a deterrent drug. In other words, if you take it and drink it as soon as a dog, it has no effect whatsoever on things like serotonin. Serotonin levels. Now, Hilton's medication at the moment is aimed at treating anxiety and depression. And the fundamental issue around addiction, I am quite convinced, is self-medication. People self-medicate. And the easiest drug to self-medicate with is alcohol, right? Because it's really available, it's socially acceptable. And Wendy alluded to some terminology that makes the thing as easy to understand as I can put it. And that is, what is the difference between alcoholism, alcohol abuse, alcohol use? And lots of people in our Western culture, South African culture, people have a drink at the end of the day, have a glass of wine and a whiskey. Some people will just have a drink on Saturday night. In fact, they might have 4 or 5 drinks on Saturday night and even drive their car, right? So what is it about? So the person has a drink at the right time and so on, and knows when to start and when to stop. That is culturally acceptable in our culture. It's very unacceptable in the Muslim faith to drink at all, right? But in our culture, the stuff is readily available. So the people that know when to start and when to stop, the probably most of the sitting in the shop. Because we all will enjoy a glass of red wine, perhaps 2 or 3 on a Friday or Saturday night. And that's never really an issue unless you decide to drive a car and kill someone, right? And that South Africans are pretty good at doing that. So that's called alcohol use. Alcohol abuse would be the person who knows when to stop and doesn't know where to stop. So that person has 12 beers and hits their wife and drives the car drunk. That is abuse. The addiction part of it is really when you don't know where to start and you don't know where to stop. So the people start drinking at 1 in the morning and where to stop. And that's the easiest way that I can explain what that is. The definitions you want to read in the literature are very, very confusing and more complicated than they should be. But there is no medication that treats addiction per se. There is medication that will treat an underlying anxiety. And that's probably the commonest thing that people self-medicate for. Right? And there are lots of drugs that do that. And some of the drugs will do you harm. But fortunately, the SSRI, the one Hilton one, is not addictive in itself, right? But tranquilizers are. So if you take Valium or Ativan or Lorazepam or some sleeping pills and so on, you just create another problem that people do it. It's also self-medication, right? So it's not a straightforward thing, and I'm not an expert by any means, but obviously I've had a lot to do with it, very directly. And because my line of work hasn't been in addiction, that's not my special interest, that's not my expertise. But fortunately, there are people who are making a special interest out of the medical field. Right? And those people are really in family medicine, they're not psychiatrists, and this will confuse some people, right? And it just is so. Psychiatrists are dealing with the more significant psychotic illnesses, if you want to call it, whether it's bipolar disorder, schizophrenia, and so on, ADHD, adult ADHD, and all of those people are more disposed to addiction. And the new thing, the sensitive children, like that, lots of people are predisposed to addiction or another. So the average population, we gave the population, we gave them an addictive substance, or probably somewhere in the order of 5% will go into trouble. If a person has ADHD, or they're highly sensitive, or they're bipolar, that goes up to about 20-25%. And those are the statistics, and those are the things that come out of North America. That's where I work at the moment. But, just the last thing, I didn't want people to think that the SSRI was specifically treating alcoholism or addiction.
He's treating his anxiety, not the addiction.
That is what has made a difference. When Hilton was visiting us in Canada, I got him to do some mental health questionnaires. And he was latently anxious and depressed. But he was still at that stage of being terribly resistant to any medication. And Sandy jokes about it, put any other substance in his body that you could find that didn't have to take something.
I needed a heart attack.
I think you'll remember doing the questionnaire.
Yes.
And it wasn't amazing. His scores were latently positive for both anxiety and depression. And they were negative for all the other psychotic illnesses and so on. So what I would include any person who has an addictive issue is to include their family doctor as part of the team. Because although Hilton saw a renowned psychiatrist, 10, was it how many years ago?
No, more than 20 years.
And there were some things there that I genuinely believe that were missed, right? I really do. And I think that whether Hilton would have taken the tablets there or not or whatever, but it's a team approach, and part of the team is the family.
Yeah, exactly. Cool, thanks, Clive. Okay, so before we wrap up, what we're going to do is I'm going to ask Hilton one more question, and then we're going to eat, and then we'll have a Q&A afterwards. But during dinner, if you want to chat to Hilton or Wendy, just do it personally. But I want to ask you the last question today. There's always an upside of something that's trauma or calamity. What is your upside?
I really think that because of all the flippant trauma that I've caused, because of how many people I've hurt choosing to live the way that I lived. I mean, whenever I focus on that a little bit too much, you still get upset. I still get very regretful. I felt like I pushed my family away for years and years on purpose because I didn't want to involve them in what I was doing. But in essence, I know how that must have felt for them. What is he doing? Why would he choose to do this? What have we done? And I know to a certain degree, Mom and Dad have asked themselves that question. It's the last thing that I would, they should never be asking that. But I find myself now saying, the positive thing is that I have a very close relationship with both of my parents, like incredibly close. And I also have, I think, a greater understanding of life and myself now more than ever. And the acceptance of saying, well, you know what, I need some pills. I need some happy pills. I need some anti-anxiety pills. So flippin' what, you know what I mean?
So what?
Like, if it's gonna help me to relax a bit and enjoy life and smell the roses, and that tension surrounding, oh, well, I'm not perfect, or I'm going to take these things now, or, I just feel good, and I'm now on holiday with my aunt,
That's me.
family. That's you,
Yeah.
Sandy, sorry, and Sandy's children are my cousins and Dave, my uncle, and my father's side of the family, and we're all in St. Francis chilling there. They're able to have their drinks around. Doesn't faze me, and that's just a flippin' wonderful feeling. It's not that I have to go, oh my god, I've got to go to a meeting tonight. And I'm not trying to diss that. If you need that, that's great. But for me, because it's been such a part of my journey, to sit there and be able to have chats with people, smelling the wine, the booze is right there, and not being in any way tempted to say, you know what, I really want that. It's a wonderful, freeing feeling. It's something that's been, I wasn't saying that I was totally drawn to it in the past when family were there, but it was in the background, But I can't, I wish I could, type of thing. Whereas now it's like, I don't want to, I need to learn how to experience life, and I believe it's worthwhile. And I think for the first time that's settled.
In your life, yeah.
I've got nothing against booze, I'm not like, that's evil shit. You and people that drink must be able to enjoy what they can facilitate in their life.
We certainly don't. We don't feel uncomfortable at all.
You said it's a wonderful something, but a terrible.
Yes, it is a wonderful servant, but a terrible master.
Okay.
Yeah.
So, thank you. I've got another 3 pages of questions. but
Oh
I
my
think-
God.
No, I'm not doing it.
Sorry.
I'm saying that this conversation never ends.
I'm hungry.
I know. This conversation doesn't end, and there are
Very
questions
teasing.
all the time. And if you go to the Facebook page on Dare to Share South Africa and you want answers, and just direct message me, I'll send them on to Hilton and Wendy, or just put them on the group, because generally a question is what everybody else wants to ask. So they are accessible, even beyond this, and even today. So, thank you so much.
Thank you.
I'm a mom of 2 young boys, and I'm particularly interested in what you think I should be telling them about drugs and volunteering.
Are they asking you any questions, or you just saying?
Very, very interested. Your natural instinct is to like maybe like seek protective, like hellfire and damnation, like moral tide, I don't know what the right thing to tell them is.
Yeah, it is a difficult thing, because to make too much of an issue of it may actually put their minds on it more. They're going to be exposed in the next few years to drinking, to smoking weed and so forth. I think it's very important to educate in terms of having family discussions about these sorts of things and bring it into the open a little bit more. Not in a way of totally condemning the substances, but perhaps bringing to light that in fact it has the possibility to destroy your life and your future. And what do you want to be? What are your desires for life? And how perhaps these things can contribute to dismantling all of that. And that's the real truth. That's not that's not
A scare tactic.
no, it's not, because it is the truth. There's some very, very good, maybe they're a bit young for it now, but in a few years' time, some shock value stuff has proven to work very well with mid-teens. I know there's a centre, I think it's somewhere in Johannesburg, that work with families and kids where they actually take people into primary care mental health facilities. And the psychiatrists and psychologists actually inform them of certain things and give some stats and so forth. It's good to be aware of what the negative effects can be. I know for a fact when I was a kid and I got introduced to these things, I mean, I'd heard drugs are bad. I'd heard like heroin is, you never do heroin, you know. But it starts with the weed. It starts with the dog. You check your friends doing more of it. Someone else is saying it's bad, but I didn't feel bad when I did it.
You felt wonderful.
Oh, wonderful. Oh, maybe this is a conspiracy. You start to think to yourself, well, this isn't what it seems to be. I remember the first time I did cocaine. I was nervous because I thought, oh my God. And I did, and I thought, oh, that's lovely. and I thought to myself, you don't quite. For me, it didn't seem evil. I didn't snort cocaine for the first time surrounded by criminals, or or this evil state that people try and bring into the ideas of young people to scare them. So it's in such contrast to what you've been told, or the scare tactic is you're going to die, or you're going to, that it just doesn't compute. Oh, it's not going to happen to me. That person must have happened for some other reason, but for me it's not going to take place. I just think to be open about discussing these things, for it not to be a taboo, for them to know that it's probably going to be available for them. And in actual fact, if they do pick up something, they'll be more likely to come to you and say, I've done this thing, because the stigma isn't so that, geez, if they know I'm going to get shut out, or, so there's less lying, less deceit at the beginning stages, which may be the very thing that helps the individual choose correctly. Yeah.
Does it answer you?
Yeah, absolutely.
Sorry, can I ask you, if you had discovered the anti-anxiety medication in your teens, would that have changed your path?
Possibly, I don't know. Possibly. I'm quite convinced that from a young child I had a pretty similar feeling to the way that I felt at 36 before I started taking it. It's like underlying felt like the same sort of thing that brought about tension. Obviously I had far more security when I was at home. I had loving parents. I was involved in a lot of healthy activities. But I could still feel like there was something not quite right, like life needed more, or that I was missing something, or I knew that it could be fabulous, but I'm just not seeing what I need. And I've always felt that. And to just give you an example, I think yes.
Yeah.
Actually, when I'm now
I would say yes.
I know that because as soon as I get clean, I'm very good at stopping. I'm just not very good at staying stopped. So I can stop tomorrow. I never got physically addicted to heroin, but I was psychologically addicted to uppers, and I used heroin and so forth. But I was never going to get a physical or physiological reaction to stop it. But psychologically, I was totally addicted to it because I couldn't get past the idea of dealing with the things that I felt in a normal way that you all do. Because perhaps I started at such a young age that I didn't develop the capacity to be able to go through the hard yards when I needed to, so as to build up perseverance and the belief that things do actually get better, or I'm able to overcome certain things that previously I wouldn't have been able to. So it's just such a multifaceted thing, but I think to a degree it would have given me a better chance to not go.
I find it interesting because you said no, there was nothing we could have done to change it, and I was wondering why that wasn't.
What I meant was, given the circumstances
At the
as
time,
they were.
okay.
Yeah, I think that the truth be told, I think that Hilton was a highly sensitive child and is a highly sensitive person, and I think that could have definitely perhaps been the forerunner, and I think that the anxiety depression tablets help with the symptoms of highly sensitive, that highly sensitive people have, that underlying sense of dis-ease. That's what a lot of people will say to me as I've got an oral hygienist who isn't an addict, but he's a highly sensitive person, and he is on the same medication that Hilton is on, and he said that the ball in his stomach that he had his entire life, even from when he was a little boy like that, within 3 weeks, it had just dissipated and gone away. And he said to me, I will never stop taking these tablets. They make me feel able to live a life without holding my breath.
But I think what Gary is asking is how come it wasn't picked up earlier?
We didn't know because Hilton didn't present as a highly sensitive child. He didn't present as a child that was anxious. Hilton, from the earliest age, was able to put on masks for people, for a different mask for different people. He was such a people pleaser and wanting to be perfect. He wanted to be perfect. And he was able to mask that anxiety. He was brilliant on the sports field. Socially, he was extraordinary. People were drawn to him like bees to a honeypot. Academically, he was bright. So he didn't present as an anxious child, but it was there.
Did the sport not help you to build up a self-esteem and sort of get over this anxiety a little bit because you were doing well?
Yeah, I think anything, when I had success when I was a teenager and so forth, it was easier for me to feel fine. But because of the ingrained thing, when I'm not succeeding or when things aren't really pumped up and going well, it just comes back. No amount of success can change an inward.
What's going on inside?
I could say like an inadequacy, a feeling of
Not
like
good enough.
I needed to put on a certain face with certain people, and that could change like a chameleon, because I believe that verification from other people, in other words, their responses, were actually telling me who I was, and I found it was one of the ways that I lived my life. Instead of being who I was and sometimes just telling my opinion, even though it may not be received very well, was never done, because I would perceive that might cause a reaction that would deplete my self-esteem because that person is seeing me negatively. And so what ends up happening is I think that the outward projection of who I was became further detached from who I really was, because outwardly I wasn't being that person. And the more confused you get and the more detached you get from life, and I suppose that's when the whole roller coaster continues, because when I'm on the dope or on the drugs, it's just now. There's no worry about anything. You just now, you're doing whatever you're doing now, anything's possible. And it just alleviates all of those things that are in the background for the period of time that you're on.
Is it a high? I mean, it's not really a high, it's just making you feel better.
Well, I don't
You mean
feel...
taking the tablets?
I don't feel high.
When you're taking drugs.
Oh.
Which
yes.
drugs?
Or any drugs.
Oh, yeah, that's what I'm taking.
No. I mean heroin or
Yeah, no, I mean...
cocaine.
They seem absolutely fantastic in the beginning. I mean,
do you feel happy or do you just feel calm, or what does it do
Depends
to
on
you
which
to
drug
make
you
you
take.
feel better?
so like things like cocaine and methamphetamine, MDMA, otherwise known as ecstasy, those are uppers. Some of them amphetamines, some of them are from the coca plant in South America. They're stimulants. They create euphoria, heightened sense of awareness. It's like your brain is just clicking. You can
Do anything.
think quicker, you can feel better, you could mow the lawn, have tea with the Queen, or do your homework, and it would all be pretty good. It just makes everything quite substantial. And that's like that in the beginning, but
Not at the end.
no, because it just depletes
And you have a downer.
all the dopamine and serotonin in your brain, and you wake up on a Tuesday and you couldn't think of anything worse than getting out of bed and facing the day. So heroin, on the other hand, is mainly dopamine release. It's not much serotonin at all, so that's more of a relaxed, sort of dreamy type state.
The heroin.
Yes, it's quite bodily feeling and obviously mentally as well, but it's really a painkiller. It's the same thing that morphine comes from, so it really is just a downer, a depressant, a dream drug. You know?
It's
So
a
that-
tranquilizer type thing.
it's different to a tranquilizer. A tranquilizer is like a benzodiazepine, which is an anti-anxiety. Heroin is more of a pain medication that numbs and creates huge euphoria. Benzodiazepine won't create huge euphoria. You know? But yeah, I mean, it's heroin would without a doubt be the most destructive drug to be physically addicted to. It is the only one, other than the pharmaceuticals and alcohol, that can that causes a physical withdrawal, a physiological dependence. All the other drugs like cocaine, methamphetamine, marijuana, none of them cause a physiological withdrawal. In a psychological withdrawal, you can become depressed, you can become anxious, you can, your mind will become overactive, you may get angry, but there's no bugs on the skin, there's no diarrhea and vomiting, there's no hot and cold symptoms and so forth. And that's the difference, because you know, real addiction is psychological, it's not physiological, in terms of the constant relapse. Can I just tell you about so there was a study done back in the 70s. Now, some of you may have heard of it, but in Vietnam, there were a huge amount of the veterans there that were addicted physiologically to heroin. They were using it daily for months on end.
Is heroin the same as opium?
Not the same, but heroin is made from opium. Opium is the raw product. Heroin is stronger than opium, but the actual core component that makes you high is in opium. It's just a molecule change. Yeah. So there were many. I don't know the numbers and the data. I'm not going to give you because I'd be guessing a little bit, and I don't want to do that. But there were many Vietnam vets that came back that were physiologically addicted to cocaine. They actually had to withdraw from it. Sorry, heroin. And they came back, and once all of them were detoxed from heroin, so now the heroin was out of the system, the physiological effects of the withdrawal.
Was it like a week or so?
No, longer than that. Probably 10 days, 2 weeks, depending. Only 7% of those people went back and used heroin.
Went back?
And used heroin.
After they had detoxed.
So, which is the way of showing what is psychologically addictive and what's physiologically addictive. So those 7% had become psychologically dependent on that, even though they were out of the war. The surroundings of the war weren't around them. They weren't using it now to feel better about their immediate circumstances, but that drug is now they are psychologically addicted to it. And those other people never used heroin again. They went away and they were just as addicted as that other person. And so that's why often people that are addicted to things like cocaine, methamphetamine, marijuana, that is proper addiction in terms of psychologically, because there's no real physiological addiction to those drugs. Some people say there is, but I mean, for myself personally and for all the friends that I know that have come off those drugs, I mean, you don't need to go to detox for those drugs. You just don't. You lie in a bed and you sleep for 2 days and you get on with it. You know? Whereas a heroin addict, you really need some help, you know, in the beginning. And that's why there's such a high rate of relapse with heroin when people first start getting off, because it's just so difficult to, if you're not assisted with medication like Suboxone or Subutex or Methadone, to wean yourself off.
Yes.
Were there any specific people in your peer group who you think put you on the path?
Yeah, not from that first drink that I played. At that stage, I was still very much like I described, like academically, sporting, all that, pretty good, honest friends. And then after that night, like I made a bit of a spectacle, not a negative spectacle, but I got into it, and then I made some friends that night, and I got back to school, and I had people 2 years older than me who were now inviting me to parties, and within the first 4 or 5 weeks after getting back, there was, at those parties, I gravitated towards the guys that were a little naughtier, a little bit more rebellious. They seemed like they wanted to include me more than the others as well, so perhaps I felt more wanted. And when you're that age, there's a power in rebellion, which when it's not seen as evil, it's almost like I got this thing. It's like you're getting away with things, you're doing things that you shouldn't be doing, and it's lacquer. It's almost like a little bit of a rush. And I wouldn't say they led me down the wrong way. I mean, I always chose to use and to drink and to experiment and all those sorts of things. But the crowd that you keep is very important. Like, there's absolutely no doubt. Because something that would seem wrong to do, after 5 weeks, suddenly it's normal. And it can become like the burning, what do they call it? The boiling frog. Have you heard of the boiling frog?
Yeah.
It's it's exactly like that.
So your level of normal just changes. Yeah.
It just changes, and in fact, it never stagnates when you're young. So it'll always increase, and there's got to be something new, something extra. And obviously, it gets to the point where, I remember starting to lose good friends. Not really being wanted at certain places anymore because they're worried about whatever. And the stigma changes, and that sort of takes you further down the exact road that you shouldn't be going on, but somehow inside of you just it's okay. And then you find yourself on the streets and no one wants to take you in, and you say to yourself, how the hell did I get here?
So you've gone to rehab 11 times, right? Of those 11 times you've been in rehab, how many of those times have you believed this is the last one and that you are now in this one? An obvious question that follows.
Yeah, twice. No, 3 times. 3 times I came out, and I can remember out of those 11 saying, you know what, I've had enough. I really don't want to do this again. And whatever it takes, I won't use it. And I said that 3 times.
So is the medication that you're taking now the difference between this time and those other 3 times?
I've only been out of primary care now since the 14th, Friday the 14th, so last week Friday. But I can already feel, in comparison to every other time that I've come out, that there's a significant difference in the way that I feel. So and I was nervous before.
March.
No, what I'm comparing is every other time, specifically those 3 times, what it felt like to come out, and especially the initial month or so. And I feel significantly different. I just don't feel like I'm walking a tightrope. I don't feel like there's a devil around every corner. I feel more relaxed to be able to enjoy the presence of my family.
And to what do you attribute that? Is that the medication?
I think that to a large extent it is, and I also think to a degree I've grown a lot over this last 9 months, due partly to the medication and being able to confront certain aspects of the program and the staff, not in a negative way, but in an open way in terms of how I felt about certain things. And that made me feel better about not holding on to certain things and questioning certain things and getting some more clarity. It brought me as a human being more into my own recovery. Instead of abiding by the rules perfectly, doing whatever they said, thinking that in doing that would create the freedom that I need, which I've tried so many times. So in actual fact, questioning the very place that you are can be seen as negative by the staff, and it was, this time. A lot of them were like, why are you being arrogant? You don't know what you're talking about. You've relapsed all these times. How can you even say a word? And at that point, normally in the past, I would have just shut up and I would have done what they told me. This time, I said, I don't agree with you. Please explain this to me. Why you think this is going to work for me? Because I don't see how it will. In that, there were some fights, there were some loggerheads, but in actual fact, I ended up leaving there on good terms, and I feel far better about my process. And so often it doesn't always, our logical brains will say we move into a treatment centre, they have the paradigms for you to follow. You follow those things perfectly, and that's the best chance you have to recover. For some people, that may very well be the case, but for me, it wasn't the case. And I think the more we can encourage people that are going into treatment, outpatient treatment, halfway houses, inpatient primary care, whatever it is, to actually question that they are a client. You're going to get those people that are forced to go there, that don't want to be there, well then so be it, they don't want to be there. But perhaps their parents make them go there, or the courts do. I'm not talking about that, I'm talking about the guy that wants to recover. If he has a question, or the lady, then he needs to voice that. He needs to have a part in his journey in primary care. Because when you leave, you're on your own again. I mean, you'll have support, but you've got to make the decisions. Now, if you've gone yes sir, no sir, 3 days, full sir, and 50% of the time you haven't agreed with it, you've lost your empowerment to take yourself further in your life. So I think that's one of the big things. We shouldn't be seen as patients who need to listen to professionals. We need to go in as clients that are willing and able to learn more about themselves through the assistance of people who care. And I think that's the main difference.
It's a little paradigm shift, yeah.
But also, Hilton is a fully qualified addiction counsellor now. So he is obviously going to migrate into that workspace and help other people, because that's what he's known for 15 years or whatever. And he's an authority. So, and for him to move into addiction counselling is such a useful thing.
But I mean, I'm not an authority at all in terms of the essence of being a staff member. I used to work at Healing Wings for just over 3 years.
3 years, yeah.
And so that's where I had some experience in working in the field, but I'm very experienced at relapsing. And I think I understand what not to do. And I think because of all the rehabs, I have a very good understanding of what doesn't work. Not just for me, but what is not a good way to do things. There's no perfect way, but there's better ways, you see. And this is the problem we have, because so many people want a perfect way. We're all trying to look for a perfect solution, ticking the boxes, and no. There's better ways that are still, and they need to be malleable. But there are just ways that are very easy for staff and not the best for the clients. And I would say 85% of treatment centres are actually making it easier for staff to run a less productive treatment centre. To be honest with you, it's a sad thing, but I believe that with all my heart. I believe, not because individual people don't care, but because it's a very hard job, it's very taxing, and most of the time people are underpaid, understaffed, and undertrained, to be honest with you. There's too much lay people in the field for clients to be gaining what they need. Often it's actually fighting and misunderstandings and judgment, which can grow people as well. I mean, I'm not saying people can't heal there. I just think things could be done better, and that's what I want to do. I want to try and understand more and try and learn more and get the latest stuff that comes out, and not remain stagnant and just say, well, they came up with this idea in the 1960s, it must be pretty good. I want to say, well, maybe there's some things in there that work well still today. Let's take those things and see. What about the brand new stuff with neuroscience and the things about empathic contributions from professional staff rather than dogmatic criticism? Let's see if that actually does work better. Perhaps with these people, something else needs to be attributed. I see very And I think that's sad, and I think that it doesn't take a lot to change that. It just takes a bit of collaboration between people that can go forward with the same type of mindset.
Are you still at Healing Wings?
No. I was there until 2013, and I went back for a contract in 2015.
Hilton, I wanted to ask you, that lady with the soft heart and the
Hard feet.
Yeah.
was she at Healing Wings?
No, she was at Careline Crisis Centre.
Was she involved at all with your last, no? And are you in touch with her?
I haven't been for a few years, but I shall be getting in touch with her again. I got to get some clean time, otherwise she'll knock me.
Sorry, I'd just like to reiterate what you're saying, and maybe put a slightly different slant on it. As someone who's recently been through as a mother, I think one of the things I learned from my child was that you go into this place and you think that they've got all the answers, and you think that they are going to fix everything, and they give you this list of rules and regulations and things that you must do and things that you mustn't do. But I think it's very, very important, and the thing that I've learned is that every single person is an individual, and every person is going to react differently. What works for one person is not necessarily going to work for another. And you have to allow that person the room to be able to be who they are.
Exactly.
And learn and grow from there. It was a lesson that I had to have kicked into my butt. But I think for anybody who has got somebody who might be going through rehab or looking at going to rehab, it's something that you as the family need to bear in mind, is that each person is going to react differently, and each person does need a slightly different approach.
Mm-hmm.
I couldn't agree more. That's it's an element there. Yeah.
I would like to also just say something that I learned that in fact impacted Hilton to the point where he made a comment about it. He might not even remember it now. But I've always been a nosy helicopter mother with Hilton. Always wanting to know where he is, what he's doing, preempting, looking for issues that might be happening, trying to encourage the archetypal codependent enabler. And I learnt over a period of time talking to somebody how important it was like a little gem, light bulb moment. She said to me, you need to meet your son where he is. Just meet him where he is. So in March, when Sandy and I went up to see him in White River, and he had literally just relapsed, and we went to fetch him, I never asked a question about the relapse. I literally met him where he was. And 24 hours after having fetched him, he said to me, Mum, something's different this time. You remember that? Something's different. And it made such a difference. And I've kept that close. So if there are any of you here who have issues with your children, with an addiction issue, don't spend your life asking them questions. Don't spend your life trying to check up on them. Meet them where they are.
What does that physically mean? I mean,
It physically means don't have expectations, don't have demands, don't ask questions,
Don't try and manage the
Yes.
rehab for them.
Yes.
And that was the mistake I was making. Is that
We all do.
I was constantly saying, are you okay? Do you
Yes.
need this? Do you need
Of
that?
course.
you do.
It's the nature of the
Need
beast.
something that will tell me.
Yeah.
Otherwise, I was just guilty back.
So what do you do? What do you say?
I love you.
I support you. I won't forsake you.
Hilton, I was going to ask you, we're here tonight to hear your story and when your story encounters all, which is fantastic. Do you ever reach, we graphic, I'm sure I am, do you ever reach a stage where you think, I don't want to go there anymore, I just want to be me? Or are you encompassed in it to a degree where you want to make it your life mission?
Well, it's not like a life mission, but like, I always think about what I want to do, and I went away from it for about 4 years, and the happiest time in my life was when I was working in it. It could be because it is slightly protective for me, because I have it around, it's in my face, I remember where I come from. But I also think it's more than that for me, because it's actually been my whole life, that I've been battling with this thing. And there's something very powerful about being open and honest about something that was a tragic part of my existence.
It's actually your knowledge now.
But I don't get, to be perfectly honest, like this sort of thing helps me a huge amount. It helps my relationship with my mom, my dad, my aunt. It helps me because I don't know, it just helps me.
If I can make a comment about the different institutions that we've had something to do with, they've actually been quite different to one another. We've had the experience of the initial one that was, we were advised to go to get Hilton to this place for 1 month. And it was 1,000 rand a day. So these things are not cheap. And a lot of people who may struggle to put together the money to do that for their kid, right? And other than because they all cost money, none of them are being free, right? None of them are being state-run. I don't know if they're state-run facilities that are
Good.
okay. I don't know. I'm ignorant about that. So my point is this: to send someone to rehab for 1 month is pretty much a waste of time, because it's probably not long enough if you think rehab's worthwhile. That's the one. However, I think many people sigh a huge sigh of relief when their kid goes there, because their kid's been in danger and they're tearing the family apart.
So that you just want to have them in a safe place?
Yeah. It's a relief. You know your child's safe, and you can say, phew.
And sleep.
You can sleep. You're going to get the 2:30 a.m. phone calls.
I was always so afraid that he would die.
Yeah, the rehabs that we've had have been pretty different from one another. Yeah, some of them have had a huge Christian bias to them. There was no bending out of that. To Joey, who I thought was the most wonderful woman.
The one with the hard feet.
One with the hard feet. Most wonderful woman.
So,
and you've had very, really well-meaning people. I don't know if there's any question about
Hilton
that.
said that.
But to make these things work on the staff, they're very expensive. Right? The one in Canada, in Vancouver, was $8,000 a month.
10 to 1.
Terrifying. That's 80,000 rand a month. So, I mean, it's terrifying.
But it was always our choice to do that, and that's important to know too.
Margot, you had a question.
I've got a statement and a question. The first statement is, when you say me and all of you normal people out there, don't make that mistake. Everybody has a history of some sort. And so that first stage of feeling like the person who's struggled and the rest that are normal, forget it. Okay, but the second thing is, what's interesting to me about what you said along the lines is the notion of listening very carefully, the notion of being a listening space for somebody who is struggling. And I think it's interesting that you make the comment that a lot of the rehabilitation states are not actually don't have the ability to do that sufficiently. And so in a way, I, coming from a different distance, have often felt that at some stage in my life I might put together a task group that was a listening group in the same kind of way that you're talking about. And I'm not sure whether that actually needs to be something formalized. I'm not sure whether it's actually something which is professional as such. But I think it's an interesting thing for me that to hear you saying or coming to similar conclusions anyway.
Guys, the restaurant will only be here at 8 o'clock. It's now 9:45. Last question.
Okay. And maybe it's about the way forward. I mean, your story is, I think it's touching us in the eyes as a family and as an individual. And maybe just to give you so much credit for being where you are now in this moment today. Is the future moment by moment?
Much more so now. And I think that's part of the peace I think that's come with this time. It's just the less expectation. I still think about the future. I've got 2 possible job opportunities starting on the 1st of April, perhaps even earlier. And it just hasn't consumed my mind. It's, geez, I've got to make my mind up tomorrow. I'm able to enjoy being with my family. I do feel that living in the present, the whole idea of, I know it's like a catchphrase now, but mindfulness and being aware of the present moment, whatever you're doing, and to get involved in whatever it is that you're doing so that your full being can be there, I think is such an obvious thing, but it's such a foreign concept in my past. You know?
Yeah.
And I think that takes quite a while to practice. I just don't think it just whacks into gear, but it's certainly far better than I remember it being. You know, there's a lot of, we're all going to die. One day we're all going to die. And like, it's like, we used to hear as kids, don't worry, it's not going to add anything to your life. You're like, yeah, no, I know that shit. But actually no, I didn't know that, really, what that meant, because it's just so true. It's, I've got to be able to have fun and enjoy things and be engaged and love people and allow things to fall where they may. Sometimes disappointment is part of the victory. All of those sorts of things. And I think that's what I want now from life. And I've still got to say that I've got that all ahead of me still. I never had that. I just didn't allow myself to live like that. It is. And I think that's what I've seen for the first time this time as well, is that it's actually exciting. It's what I want to do. It's like all that other shit, no matter how fun it is for 10 hours, even to say, it's actually boring now for me. It's like I've hit the ball against the same wall for 15 years and it still comes back the same way. It still looks the same. I don't hit any better shots. I hit my best shots when I was in my mid-20s. It's like I just want newness of life and I want things to take place as they are. And life is worth it. It really is. It has to be, because otherwise why are we here? On this planet. We probably wouldn't have made it or something. We'd be like clever crocodiles or something. It's like it really must be enough. And I believe it.
So I just want to wrap up by thanking all of you. It's gone on longer than we thought, and I really appreciate that. And if there are questions, Hilton and Wendy, Hilton's here for a while. Wendy's going back on the 27th. So on the Facebook page, if you want access to Wendy and Cloud, just go on the Facebook page, direct message me. If there are questions that you haven't got to ask or you think about later, it's not where it ends, the conversation's just started. And hopefully we have more of these dare to share evenings where we can seek to understand. Thank you.